And you're live.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to the March meeting of the Annapolis Environmental Commission. We have Alderman Savage is joining us tonight. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Look forward to your update. Go around the horn. I am Kathy Welker, representing Ward 5. I'm the AEC chair. Linda.
Hi, everyone. Linda Matthew. I am also in Ward 5.
Marianne.
Miriam Marbury, Ward 1.
Alicia.
I'm Alicia Roberson, Ward 7.
And Jeremy.
Sorry, Jeremy Hansen, Ward 5.
Okay.
A lot of Ward 5 tonight.
We are heavy on Ward 5. That is one thing I wanted to chat a little bit about. We're on the agenda. Bill O'Leary said he's gonna join us a little bit late, but he should be here. I have not heard from Paul or Jenny. I don't think so. Maybe we'll see them. So first order of business is approving the minutes from the last meeting. I had a couple of things I wanted to ask about those. I thought Paul joined us last time late, but I thought he came. Am I misremembering that? I don't see him in the roll call section of the notes.
I think he did. I do remember him joining, but then I think we lost him before the end.
Okay. All right. And the only other question I had was in the section about the green roofs on bus shelters, the last sentence, Dylan, I had thought that we said we were going to go ahead and draft a letter. So I don't know if I misunderstood, and because I did draft the letter. And this was, but you have here to explore whether a letter of support should be drafted. So I don't know if I mistakenly drafted the letter or if we did agree to draft a letter, if that we needed to tweak that. Whatever others recollect. Appreciate your feedback here.
Yeah, no, I do remember talking about, finding where along the line the legislation was and how it was going to get through. But yeah, that latter part I can't exactly recall.
Alicia, we discussed that I would draft something, I thought, and then I was hoping to get your input because you had some
Yes.
ideas about it, right?
We said that we would draft something.
Okay, so maybe we could update that
Mhm.
sentence. Anyone else have any comments on the minutes?
Yeah, I just emailed something out like as I was joining, so apologies that I was so late, but just a suggested edit towards the end where I was talking about the Athens development and then federal funding. I think the minutes had lumped those together, so I just tried to split that up. So I was just asking for an update on the status of the Athens development and then a future briefing if there were impacts on any city projects, environmental projects, due to the funding pauses.
Got it. Okay.
Anyone else? Can we make them have a motion to accept the minutes as they will be edited? Can we do that? Or do we need to wait?
I think those were clear enough for Dylan, right?
Yeah, we've done
So-
that before. So yeah, your call.
Yeah. Motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So the minutes are good to go. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is the the draft letter about the green roofs on the city bus shelters. And so thank you, Alicia, for weighing in on that letter. You definitely improved it. I thought it improved my writing for sure. I
You had a
did let
great
everybody
base.
know. What was that?
You had a great base.
Oh, thank you. I did let everybody know in my email when I sent out the draft that the Environmental Matters Committee had in the meeting I attended virtually, they did discuss that at quite some length and decided there was additional information they needed. So it was sent back to city staff to gather more information. But I don't think that, and some of the things we talked about were also some of the things that the Environmental Matters Committee talked about too. So I don't know if we can run through, I'd like to run through the letter and see if there are any other changes that we want to make, and then decide if we still want to send it, considering that it's kind of a TBD with the council right now. And I will share my screen. Can you all see the letter?
Yes.
Okay. So we, just say that, we have reviewed and discussed the proposed legislation, and that we understand that it's been postponed currently. And that, while we acknowledge that green roofs have potential environmental benefits, we believe there are some other additional considerations that the city council could consider before any future decision. And so then, Alicia, you put in this bullet here. I don't know if you want to just run through it really quick.
Basically, current research basically shows that green roofs less than 100 square meters tend to be insignificant in their environmental benefit due to the cost to implement and maintain. So that's mostly what that bullet point is highlighting, is that these bus stops they're likely too small, and the distance between each other is just going to add additional maintenance costs. So we don't see that this is the right step to implementing green roofs in the city.
And then I don't know if you need to cite that.
Ye-
I guess it could hurt if you wanted to, but
Yeah.
do you, Alderman, do you appreciate citations on these things so you can go back to the source?
Yeah, I mean, that's always helpful. I was just thinking, I think if you could make sure you CC me or the Environmental Matters Committee on, just to make sure I get this, because we are going to be talking about this at our next meeting, committee meeting next month.
We can do that. Okay. And then the other main point is that, these small projects, pilot projects and demonstration projects are, they're always nice, and it would be nice to see what the outcome is, but that we think that the overall mobility, public transportation issues in the city, would be maybe a better use of funds. Obviously, that's a big problem. The bus stops was a smaller one, but I think that we would, from our point of view, like to see the focus more on the actual availability of transportation. And Alicia, I had here highlighted, I wasn't sure what to put here for like number of, if we wanted to put in actual, like how long it was, you figured it would take you.
Yeah, I forgot to edit that
So
note.
maybe you can, so if
I
you
think
wanna,
maybe you could just remove that section.
okay.
I think we're just trying to highlight that the use of public transportation is a very sustainable option. And it's really not that the city of Annapolis could do better in providing that to residents.
Okay. Because as I was writing it, I actually did a little research on using it from my house, and I became a little more familiar with that on-demand transit.
Mhm.
and found that the only place I could get it was actually at the bus stop on Forest Drive, which is like over a mile away from me to get to that bus stop, right? Which is a long way to go when you've already got the drive into Annapolis then. So, other comments, changes you all would like to see in this? And you had it in an email. You also should have it in an email I sent to you earlier today as an attachment. Okay. Or would we like to send this, even though it's not a yay or nay, it's just a considerations. You know, if somebody would like to make a motion to accept it as with the changes that Alicia and I have discussed, I can make those changes before I send it.
I make a motion that we do submit a letter to the mayor about the greenhouse bus stops.
And it would be to the mayor and the city council. Is that, we have
Right.
to be that precise in our in the motion? I'm not sure.
Yeah, a program to build green roofs on the city bus shelters.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
And all in favor of finalizing the letter and sending it?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, great, thank you. So next on the agenda is to review and finalize the 2025 priorities. So I still had a couple of questions about them. And thank you to those who did provide input on these. So let me put those up. Share screen again. See that? Oops, I don't know what that was. So this initial part of the letter is pretty much the same as what we submitted last year. I didn't know if we wanted to highlight in here the our interest in assisting more with kind of the public education piece, which is a bullet that we've added farther down in the priorities. And then I also wanted, we say here, to incorporate environmental justice throughout decision-making processes, but we don't actually address that in our priorities. So I didn't know if we wanted to keep it here or if we want to add something. I don't think we have language in the priorities about that. So wanted to have your thoughts about that too, before we move into the actual priorities on those two things.
What is environmental justice?
It's focusing on EJ communities that might typically be overlooked for environmental projects. So your lower income, your communities of different cultures, because a lot of times environmental work is in your more wealthy neighborhoods that have like the additional funds for it.
And I think the other piece of that is very often those lower income communities are the ones that end up situated next to things that are not environmentally healthy too. I don't know that that's the case in Annapolis, but across the country that tends to happen. They're the ones near like the industrial sites or the refuge sites, or the trains or whatever. That's not as
Okay.
funding mechanisms have requirements for EJ communities. So I don't know if it's like a thing that the city of Annapolis hasn't been able to do. But I'm pretty certain they have to focus on those areas for funding. But that's a good point. I don't remember talking about it last year. But I think Jeremy put together this letter. Do you remember
That-
it all?
I mean, that could very well also be a holdover from the year before that,
Okay.
honestly. Yeah, and I know when Randy was the chair, he was obviously very, very keen on those issues. And yeah, I don't think the current set of priorities we had last year or this year really get at environmental justice, because that's really about remedy and restitution. That's what justice means. So I don't know if we really get that far. I think we're more about the access or the equity and the inclusion aspects than the justice. So if you want to just edit the sentence to reflect kind of our last point about community and access, just to make sure that, improving the quality of our local environment for the benefit of all city residents. I think that's something
Yeah.
along those lines makes more sense.
Is environmental justice, I guess I should go back to the comp plan and see how it's incorporated there. And I guess, Dylan, do you have any input on how your office is incorporating environmental justice? I know that resilience plan, you need to address food deserts, right? Which is environmental, but I don't know. And does that come up
Yeah.
with
Um, Sorry.
how does that come up in the work that you and Jackie are doing?
Yeah. Oftentimes, as someone alluded to it earlier, with certain grant opportunities, there's often a lot of guidance surrounding, how we should incorporate environmental justice considerations. And we oftentimes will just, kind of follow that guidance when we don't even need to. So we consider, we look at data about, which certain areas are going to be disproportionately affected by different things, which areas have been ignored in the past for certain benefits, like Alicia was saying, and we try to think of ways to correct that. So an example might be, if we're dealing with urban heat, the highest area for urban heat, the most at-risk area might not be an area where the people are going to be affected the most, whereas the second most impacted area might be an area that's, low income, doesn't have means of transportation, has energy insecurity, other things like this. And so we might prioritize, greenification, some sort of project like that in that area, resilience hub in that area, things like that. So we just try to use data and our institutional knowledge of the demographics and the the population that we have here to make more informed and equitable decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'd like to propose that we can take this out later, but as we go through the priorities, if we see a place where we can include environmental justice, something I'd like to see. So why don't we go through the document and then kind of we'll decide then. And
Well,
could somebody just send Paul the Zoom link so he can hop on? He's listening on the public site, but he can't find the Zoom link. If somebody wouldn't mind emailing that to him, that would be great. Thank you.
Well,
Mary
Kathy.
Ann.
Oh, sorry.
Kathy,
Mary Ann.
do we know if environmental justice is discussed in the comprehensive plan in the environmental section of the plan? I could go through it and see if because it would be it would be easy to tie it, easy to tie it into that. So we're consistent with what the overall plan is for the city.
Yeah, no, I think that's would be good to know.
Okay.
Do you have time to kind of scan while we're talking, or?
Yeah, yep.
that-
I'll try to
that'd
do
be
that.
great.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Alicia.
Well, I was going to add, if we wanted to remove it, I think that it would be okay because it's like actively the city and counties are pretty well aware of the requirement for environmental justice. And I know it is part of the decision making. So if we wanted to consider that, I don't think we'd be losing that aspect to the work.
Okay, thank you. And then since we had added in that public education kind of component, do we want to refer to that in this text too? Or maybe we'll come back to this after the end, after we go through the priorities. Let's do that. Might be easier to answer that question. Okay, so the first priority stays the same: support alignment of environmental programs with the comp plan to protect and expand natural assets in the city. The language has been updated to reflect in this first bullet Mary Ann's suggestions. So that language doesn't mean anything too different, but it's the language has just been tweaked so that it actually talks about the specific performance measures. The one thing I did have a question about, performance measure 3 is to establish a consistent annual budget for tree planting and proactive tree maintenance. I thought that exists now.
Yeah, the city
maybe we don't need
forester.
to refer to that.
The city forester gave a presentation on it last year, and my belief is they approved a budget for him.
And you see that continuing, Alderman Savage, or just wondering if we need to leave that bullet in here? Or
Yeah,
not.
no, I successfully got it coupled with our watershed restoration fund, our stormwater fee. And so that fee now pays for our entire forest program. And
Okay.
the idea is to have a fund entire program that's needed to meet our 50% canopy by 2050 goal.
So Marianne, and the rest of you, is okay with you if we remove this bullet because it's not
Yeah.
something we're actually going to be
Yeah, so that is so that basically that goal has been met because there wasn't this annual budget that we just discussed when the priorities were put together. So
Okay, so we can
Yeah.
remove that. All right.
okay.
This is the second bullet is new language. It came from the discussion that we had about a couple of things. So it emphasizes the necessity of several actions: tree planting and proactive tree maintenance, education of city residents and the private sector on the value of trees and their role in increasing the canopy, and innovative measures needed to meet either of the first two performance measures. And so that's, came from our discussion, particularly of the importance of the tree maintenance, right? That should be addressed. Educating city residents is something that I think that maybe our commission can support. Like, I know Save the Trees is out there; they're doing a lot of stuff.
Right.
We'd like to be able to support that too. And then the third one came from a discussion of the fact that there was some uncertainty if the goal, while a great goal, is actually achievable. And so we really wanted to make sure, to help think through innovative measures that we can do to meet it, or mitigate the loss or whatever. And
Mm.
Alicia, that was one of yours too.
Yeah,
and
but
you
that's
wanted
a good
say
way to-
more about-
That's a good way to put that into writing.
Okay. So that's new. And then, and I don't know if Jenny has joined us. Oh, Paul, hi. Thanks for joining. Glad we could get you on.
Get them into the minutes.
Yeah, minutes. And then to encourage the adoption and widespread use of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure, I think is the same, but the language has been tweaked a little bit. So we have added in here, I think we expanded a little bit. So it wasn't just pollinator-friendly native plants, but other kinds of green infrastructure that we would be able to provide some subject matter expertise about, and then also to assist in dissemination of communication materials as we can. I think there was a question here, and Alicia, I know you and Jenny had some discussion in the comments, because one of the things that we are going to start doing is getting a list of for the planning commission, or one of the departments in the city. I'm sorry, I don't remember which one, of the current list of developments, right? So that if there's a chance to offer some ideas of how they may incorporate some of this nature-based solutions in green infrastructure, that could be something that we could recommend as part of our role.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the new bullet: to support increased public awareness and community involvement in environmental actions. The AEC can support the development of educational initiatives and use social media and other platforms to raise awareness about environmental initiatives and encourage community participation. So that's a new bullet there. Any comments on this section? You're ready? Okay. So the next one, I don't think we have a lot of changes in this one, but I did have a couple of questions. So this one is to support the city's effort to reduce carbon emissions and increase, we did add increased resilience, that phrase, resilience in the face of future climate conditions. And this is a new bullet, I apologize. Review and provide feedback on the city's resilience plan that they're beginning, that Dylan and Jackie are starting to work on. So, we will be involved in, have a chance to be involved in that. Then support efforts aligned with the comp plan to increase the city resilience, reduce the carbon footprint, improve the quality of local environment. And so part of this is through joint meetings that addresses the outreach that we want to do to the other commissions and kind of develop some relationships there. The short-term priorities include the EV use and supporting the resilience plan, and then improving mobility options also. I had in my notes from the last meeting that we had somebody had mentioned maybe including solar and flooding specifically in here, but my notes were very vague. So if somebody had mentioned that and would like to see more language added here, please let us know. Anybody?
I don't remember specifically including that note, but I mean, I think it's part of the understanding that those are, well, I guess it's carbon footprint. No, I don't recall.
Anybody remember saying that? Because I think like the solar definitely fits in with this, but when we talk about city resilience, that certainly goes to the the flooding piece and some of these ongoing efforts like the Amory effort and other resilience authority city initiatives that are going on. And so I didn't know if there was, maybe we don't need to be that specific in here. But I didn't know if anybody wanted to consider language referencing those kinds of projects too.
I mean, I would say reducing carbon emission and resiliency are like two different items, but
Mhm.
I think you could leave it with the understanding that those, would be used to help the city be more resilient and reduce, solar would reduce emissions. So
No, I think I agree with what you're saying. The resilience is more than just reducing your carbon footprint. And that's where these projects like the Amory to reduce flooding, the Amory project come in, things like that. And so we don't really specifically get into that part of resilience. And I didn't know if we needed additional language or if just supporting the city's resilience plan at this point is sufficient, although that's going to be climate focused.
yeah, maybe good to add a bullet point then.
And have any other thoughts about that?
Sorry, I missed that.
They have their hand up. I'm missing it. Any other thoughts on this section? The last one, strengthening community and access through environmental efforts. I don't think this changed at all. And I didn't know if we wanted to strengthen this at all. Or if this, and if it's this, it's fine. But I didn't know if there was anything additional that anybody wanted to add to this one. Improving the quality of our local environment for all city residents, public access to waterways and green spaces should continue to be encouraged and expanded. Can use its voice to amplify community concerns related to, there we go, environmental justice, inclusion, and equity. I apologize. It was all the way at the end and I did miss it. So I answered my own question. Anything that we want to change here? All right. So we'll keep environmental justice at the top, since we do refer to it down here, or was there a consensus on removing it? Yes, Marianne.
Yeah, Kathy, yeah, I mean, I think I'm fine with keeping it. There is the comprehensive plan does speak to environmental justice. There's a section and it ties back to what we're talking about. So I think we're good. I mean, it's again consistent with the comp plan.
Is there anything you're seeing in the comp plan? And I know this is just kind of, you're just kind of scanning it right now.
I am,
but
yeah.
Is there anything that you think that we can put in additionally?
That's more specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for right now.
Sure.
It's pretty general.
Yeah,
So far,
the comp plan talks about environmental justice, but as far as I'm aware, at least in the environmental goals section, there's nothing specifically about environmental justice.
right.
It might
Yeah,
be
I'm not-
worded differently, and I could check again. But
Yeah,
that's
I'm finding the same thing, that there's nothing specific. There's just a general commentary on it.
Thank you for looking that up. Can we, because I need to write this other bullet here, another bullet. So we're getting a little bit more resilience in this section, this one section. And then we could look a little bit closer at the EJ language in the comp plan. Does that mean that we would have to approve it at these priorities at the next meeting? Or can we circulate another draft, a final draft following this meeting in the next few days and approve it via email? Are we allowed to do that?
Could you say it again? Sorry.
If we were going to make a few changes based on the conversation we had here, can we circulate the draft and approve it via email?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Is that, do we have to vote on that action? I really don't know my Robert's
I don't think
rules.
so.
Okay. Does that work for everybody? Does anybody opposed to that course of action?
Works for
All
me.
right, great. So I will look at the comp plan too, but Marianne, if you have thoughts, if you find something in there that you think would work, or you want to point out to, so we could all kind of check it out, that would be great.
I can do that. Well, I'll go through it in more detail, and then I can put an email together to you, Kathy, and you can take a look at it, and then.
Okay. Dylan, did you put your hand up?
Yeah, just checking again, the comp plan. There is some mention of vulnerable communities in the goals section. So it talks about some outreach to vulnerable communities. Let's talk about food deserts in vulnerable communities. It also talks about resilience hubs in vulnerable communities as well. Other than that, I don't see a ton explicitly in the goals. I do see for the purpose of ensuring equity and resilience investments, but then it kind of goes on and doesn't talk too much about the equity portion of it. But there is, some verbiage surrounding equity, resilience, or other disadvantaged communities, environmental justice, and things like that. In the goals, it's just not. It wasn't a huge focus in the goals explicitly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. All right. Anyone else on this before we move on to the next item?
Raise hand.
Thank you. That was good. We're going to have these done soon. And Alderman Savage, I know you're going to speak later, but when you brief us, if you have thoughts on this that you want to share at that point, I mean, if there's something that we're thinking of that would align with what your priorities are, we'd love to find some kind of sync those up if possible, for sure.
Yeah, of course.
See, Paul's a hand.
Paul?
Thank you. Just to wrap up on the what you were just speaking of, environmental justice. I living 300 yards from Clay Street or whatever, I have a little bit of a view of, a perspective. So it is for sure a food desert. They were super excited when the 7-Eleven opened up on West Street, the gas station, because they had a store. The downtown, years ago, we tried to get the farmers market downtown after they broke up, after the end of each day, each Saturday, to go up and drop off stuff at the little Chinese place on Clay Street. That didn't work. I wonder, it takes a community to be concerned if we could organize a shuttle. Now that we have more free shuttles going around, if there could be a free shuttle to lead to closer farmer markets. There used to be the one by the football stadium, and then a couple others. I won't drill down into which one, but why not city shuttles to farmers markets on the days those farmer markets are operating, and the SNAP coupons, delicately the food stamps, those are those are 2 for 1. You get $2. They're 2 for 1 at many food markets or at farmers markets. So that's one thing. There could be some trees on West Street, on Clay Street. That would be nice. And again, I would wait till which citizen says, "Hey, I bought a hybrid or a plug-in or an EV," but I still think putting EV chargers on light post is a really affordable way to do things. We don't need to go spend $200,000 to plug in maybe a couple of cars on Clay Street. But if somebody had a car, and we'll let Rob lead the charge on this, getting EV charging attached to light poles is an inexpensive way to retrofit. So those are the 3 things: shuttle bus, farmers markets. Let's get some trees there and somehow work on some EV charging there. If any of the citizens there have a need for it, eventually they will. Those were my points.
Thank you, Paul. So maybe what we can do in the priority language in a couple of those areas is include a little environmental justice language that gets to some of your points too. Maybe maybe a little more broadly. But would you like to see a little more environmental justice language that kind of covers your points in the priorities?
Well, after what happened on Clay Street last week, environmental justice isn't their biggest issue, but if we go with 1,000 panes of broken glass theory, it would be nice to make things a little better. I'm not trying to be overly biased towards Clay Street. It's just I live near it and I see some possible solutions. I tried to get the other thing is the community garden. Tried to get that going, because they do have community gardens at Green Street Elementary, and that's where the kids go to school. They don't go to Severn School, okay? They go to Green Street. They're taught gardening at Green Street. It would be nice if they came back, and so it's a little bit that neighborhood to, some of this is bootstrapping themselves. There's enough empty lots there. They should be growing some produce. So those would be my suggestions through my rose-colored yuppie glasses.
I think those are great, Paul. Thank you. When I look at the document, I'll see how maybe to work something in, and then would like your feedback when you see the draft.
Okay.
To make sure that it and anybody else have any thoughts about Paul's suggestions? Okay. All right. Great. So next we were going to talk about the city webpage and the Facebook page and how we want to use it. I did hear from Dylan, thank you, Dylan, that there's some required training we need to take to use Facebook. I wanted to send it out to you all so you knew ahead of time, but I sort of ran out of time. So Dylan, is there anything that you want to say about that training and what we need to do to make sure that we don't, step over any lines that we shouldn't in our use of social media?
Regarding social media, so basically because the Environmental Commission is, an arm of the city, it has to follow the same sorts of communication rules that local governments need to follow in general. And so anything that's posted on that social media needs to follow those guidelines. And our communications team, our PIO and our constituent liaison, they put together some pretty comprehensive training. And they said that, we can use this at any time. So anyone who wants to post there on the Environmental Commission Facebook page would need to review the social media policy and needs to review the guidelines that was created by city staff. And part of those guidelines and that policy is kind of just regarding, language, the type of content you can put up, how long it needs to stay up for, There's some surprising rules about that. One of the main things is that once it's up, it has to stay up. I think you can't remove it until about 6 years later. That's what I'm reading that here. And there's obviously more there. And whoever's interested in using that Facebook page, we can schedule a call and you can kind of go through it all together. I think it's a good idea to use that Facebook page. But if you ever feel like you don't want to follow these guidelines, we can simply reach out to our PIO and you can post or request to post directly on the main city page. But yeah, as long as you're following these guidelines, you're free to use the AEC page that you like.
That's good news. I do intend to take the training. Is it online or is it actually an in-person component, like a?
So we can put together the training as staff, because as of right now, it's kind of just documents that provide you some guidance. And so we as staff can just kind of run it through with you and answer any questions and things like that.
Okay. Bill, I know you and I have those administrator rights. Who else has administrator rights to the page? Offhand.
I thought Paul did and maybe Jeremy, but I can check.
I don't think I ever had admin on that page.
Okay. I can add whomever.
Paul, do you know if you do?
It wouldn't surprise me if I did. I haven't posted on it forever. That was back in the days when we were actually doing something called a newsletter. But so that's how Bill and I were involved on the communique team. So yeah, I'm probably tagged in on that, but I haven't done anything on the environmental page in years. So short answer, wouldn't surprise me if I do have authority, but I'm happy to relinquish it.
Is anyone here interested in taking the training and being an administrator and helping as we figure out what we want to post on there? And so I guess this part of it will be the training, but part of it, I'd love to have a discussion with the, with the public information staff about, what are those limits, because there's so much going on in the community, right? And it's scattered at all these different places. And I would love to be a place where, people are seeing some of these activities they could get involved in. I'd love to use it to kind of educate people on like good environmental practices, kind of promote the city's environmental programs. There are so many great programs that the city has. I would just love to be able to do all those different things, but I want to make sure that we can. So I guess I'm asking who would like to be on a little Facebook committee with me.
Well, I certainly will.
I'm hoping that you will. We all have so much spare time. But is anybody else interested? And we'll make sure that we find a time to do the training together.
Yeah, sure, I will.
Thank you.
Will also take the training, but I will preface this with that I don't have a lot more free time. So,
okay. Well, I appreciate
it. A third helping hand, or fourth.
Well, and
even
if you don't have time to like post and everything, certainly help us figure out like what can we what do we want to use it for? What is that going to look like? And then we can kind of present it to the rest of this group and come to an agreement. And I'll let the rest of you think it over. If you change your mind, let me know. All are invited. Okay. The other thing is the AEC City webpage. When I talked to Bill a while back, Bill, you mentioned that it had not been updated in a long time. And it is this page, correct? Let me share my screen. This is the page we're talking about. Yes. There's no other.
Yeah, just Annapolis.gov/environment should take you there.
This is Annapolis.gov/environmental-commission.
Yeah, I think we just have like a redirect. So all you have to remember is /environment. It'll get you there. But
So
yeah, that's the
this
page. That's the page.
the page? Okay, great. So looking at some of the other commission pages, this part's pretty standard, right? So really, I don't know how much flexibility we have. There are a lot of documents listed down here. I don't know if some of them are still in use. Some of them seem pretty old. So I don't know if this is what we have the ability to kind of make recommendations to Jackie and Dylan to update. Or if there's anything else that we can do with the page. Do you know, Dylan, or is that another PIO kind of question?
I'd have to confirm, yeah.
Okay. Because I was looking just at the county. This is the Citizens Environmental Commission. So, I don't know that we have flexibility to do anything different. And the information on here isn't tremendously different, but it does look a little more interesting. Got a photo. So maybe that's something we can talk to, if you can ask Dylan, do we have any flexibility?
My guess would be yes, but I'll just have to confirm.
Okay.
So Kathy, it used to be that we had access to SiteMinder or Site Builder or whatever the content management system was for the website, and we really couldn't make many changes to the initial splash page of the Environmental Commission site, but we could add. We used to have to add meeting minutes to that website. I think minutes are handled differently now, but there was also like an education sub page and like a project sub page that we had more freedom to add our own content to.
Is it this page?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. I was thinking those were like general city pages, not like, but I see. Yes, you're right. Okay. Is this the only one then, or what's the how-to guides and tips? Okay, so we've got a couple of things here. So Dylan, like proposed development at Crystal Springs, is that something that are all these along the side here things that we would make recommendations to update, or if we had rights to could update ourselves? Can you find out about that?
Yeah, I can definitely find out. But yeah, I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah. Okay. Any thoughts about how anybody would like to be able to use this page if we're able to keep a projects or how-to guides and tips? Any thoughts? I see it. Oh, Paul, your hand is up.
Yes. And I apologize the other week when I was, or the other month when I tapped in through the city site, I didn't have a hand, so I realized it looked like I was interrupting, so now I'll use my hand a lot. Anyways, I have two words, and this resonate with Bill O'Leary. Elvia Thompson. It's sad that Annapolis Green has disbanded, but the vigor is still in those ladies, and maybe if it's okay that we have someone outside the commission. I mean, she used to be on the commission. She's exceedingly highly regarded. Maybe, she's got a bit of spare time. Maybe she could be, the AEC's webpage could be a teeny little sounding board for some of the pieces that Annapolis Green used to do. We still have a cleanup every year, right? And the Naval Academy contributes some young, strong people to do the heavy lifting. So our page has been woefully dormant, but now Annapolis Green went away. We ought to get some of their voice and energy maybe onto our page.
Is that possible, Dylan, to have someone that's not on the commission help us with the webpage?
I would seriously doubt it, just because, they're not sworn in as part of the commission. Yeah, again, I could definitely ask, but I wouldn't expect as much.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, interrupting, but fine. Bill or I or anyone else who may know Elvia, and I'm a big fan of her and Lynn's, we can sit with them and say, hey, what do you got going on in the city? And they tell us. And if it's fairly truthful and vetted, there's nothing wrong with Bill or I posting it on the site. Correct, Dylan? Okay.
Probably. Again, I would have to confirm if commission members can edit this website. But yeah, I'll just have to confirm as well.
I think that if we think about using Facebook and we think about using these web pages, I think that we need to think in terms of, to me, the web page is going to be a little slower, a little more static, where the Facebook's going to be a little more dynamic and what's happening right now. I don't know that the web page, these web pages would support that kind of like, okay, there's a activity in 2 weeks, just, come join. So maybe as we get into this planning for the Facebook and the web page, we can kind of think about which one what kind of information works best where. And Dylan, I would be interested to know if these pages, like our main page and these other pages connected to us, how many hits they're getting, if they're getting, many hits, or is that something that they can?
Yeah, Ina would have.
But Paul, Dylan will check on it, but I'd love to be able to have input from other folks on what would be most useful and what's happening. And so if there's a way that we can figure out how to do that correctly, I think that would be great. Other thoughts about this, anybody? I feel like I have a lot of questions for the communications staff when we get to do this training and talk to them. All right. So Dylan has a lot of questions to get answered and also to help us set up this training for Bill and Alicia and myself and anybody else who changes their mind and would like to join us. And then we will keep talking about this and figure out how we can use these pages. Where are we now? Okay, so review the Department of Planning and Zoning updates. Dylan, I think we talked last time about having that spreadsheet coming to us every month.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it got out. I feel like I've missed a lot of stuff. The past couple of weeks have been a little crazy. So I don't know if it came out to us, or if you just have verbal updates in your section.
No, I wasn't able to get it to you. We don't know if DPZ is currently keeping like a comprehensive spreadsheet of that right now. We just haven't received it. And so we'll continue to try to get that information your way, but if it's not coming from the first channel, it can't get to the third. But I'll keep you updated on that.
Okay, yeah, because I think we would like to be able to see that every month if we can. Anyone else have questions for Dylan about that?
Yeah, I assume that this is kind of answering your question about Athens earlier, but yeah, just unfortunately we don't have the update right now.
Okay. Paul, is your hand up new or is that a
Oh.
holdover?
That was a holdover.
Okay. All right. Okay, then we will go on to ongoing business or updates. I can change this order. Alderman Savage, would you like to go first, or would you like to hear Dylan's updates first before you give us an update on what you've been working on?
Well, I'll always choose to go first.
Okay.
Just for the sake of time. Sorry, Dylan. Hope you understand. Yeah, so do you want me to just jump right into my presentation for you?
That'd be great.
All right, let me see if I can share my screen. Where is the share screen?
Should be down at
There
the
it is.
bottom. There's a green arrow, a little green box with an arrow in it. There you go.
Found it. Okay, so. All right, everybody see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And please let me know if I'm going on too long. It's easy for a politician to talk too much. Let's see. So it's 8 o'clock now. All right. So I just want to briefly highlight where we've been, some of our past accomplishments. And this is, I guess, since I've been on the council past 8 years. We've overhauled Forest Conservation Act, turned it into a no-net loss because the former Forest Conservation Act really was ultimately leading to forests still being lost, and that act only applies to properties over an acre in size for new development. And then we went on the next one. You see critical area overhaul. We applied that to the critical area and overhauled that, and we now have the strongest critical area, but also the strongest Forest Conservation Act in the entire state. We have a no discharge zone that we passed, plastic bag ban, the foam ban, gas powered leaf blower ban. We implemented turtle friendly curbing requirement in the critical area. We raised our stormwater management standards for new development and redevelopment. We overhauled our erosion sediment control inspections. As far as enforcement, we passed a drive-through ban. I put this in bold because I think it's been a huge benefit, even though Jackie's not here, but hopefully Dylan will appreciate. But creating the city manager for resilience and sustainability was, I think, a huge benefit. When you hear their updates, I know on the Environmental Matters Committee, we're always very impressed with the amount of work that the city, that her office does, her and Dylan. So thank you both. We also fully funded our forestry program, which I mentioned the first time. It tied it to our watershed restoration fund, so it actually has a dedicated funding stream. We also have overhauled our watershed restoration fund, and that is they're making the shift this year to be based on actual impervious surface. And it's going to make it more equitable, but also hopefully raise more funds. And I'll speak a little bit more about that as I go on. So where do we go from here? Personally, I think that sustainable mobility is really where we need to focus, because as I'll get into, that's really in my mind what we need to focus on for the climate crisis. I know a number of environmental groups don't really pay much attention to transportation, where it makes up 30% of our emissions. We need to work on that more. It also improves air quality. Even my son, I took him to Europe and he noticed. He went to Stockholm, and then when he went out recently last week, when we were up in Killington, on the way up we took the train. He stopped in New York City, wanted to see the Empire State Building, but he remarked when he went out in New York City, he said, "Oh my gosh, it smells in the city," because there's so many cars. That's the big difference between us and Europe. Bay restoration, because we get a lot of air deposition of nutrients that impact our bay. from not only power plants, but also automobile safety, safety of our streets, pedestrian, cyclists, and also equity. It's cheaper to get around when you have free transportation on transit as opposed to having to pay for a car, and also traffic. So I'll get into those a little bit more. And it comes out of our trip to Europe. Mayor Buckley's been big on helping to educate us on sustainable mobility. So we went to Netherlands, but also Sweden. We learned quite a bit about both of those topics, which I want to again get into. And I can't remember if I presented to this commission on this before or not, but one of the big takeaways from Sweden was, and again, my background's environment, but they are just leaps and bounds ahead of us. They've adopted a lot of these UN sustainability goals. They already have 100% renewable transportation for their public sector. And they're actually at 70% for all the transportation in a lot of their cities like Stockholm. So that's 70%, including private transportation. So we have a ways to catch up. And a part of it that I was impressed by is their power supply. They utilize incineration, which around here is quite the faux pas because it does contribute a lot of pollution. But when I was asking them, they said, well, we actually capture 100% of their carbon, liquefy it, and then inject it into the old underwater oil wells in Norway. So they export the liquefied carbon to Norway. And I said, okay, that's great, but what about all the other harmful chemicals that come from incineration? And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, what do you mean? What about all the stuff you're burning, the trash? And they said, well, in the European Union, they've told all their producers, the manufacturers, to take the harmful chemicals out of their products so they can burn them because they can't have landfills. And so I was just amazed by this because even now, Maryland is working, the delegation is working to remove incineration from our renewable energy mix. When my view is we should keep it in there, but just say, look, if you want to get renewable energy, you have to make sure it's clean. But Sweden shows that you can have clean incineration and be a sustainable society. And their other big thing was renovation and reuse. I was really impressed because they've even looked at the carbon footprint of extracting construction material, be it sand or soil, gravel, what have you. They try to reuse everything. All their excavation equipment, they're trying to be renewable or electric. This is a picture of just an old urban building that they've renovated. Instead of tearing down, they renovate it and actually build a geothermal energy production. And I was just really impressed. In Annapolis, we talk about a lot about historic preservation, but we haven't really incorporated that into our entire thinking for every building in the city. And a big part of this is and this is a big part of my focus moving forward, is breaking free from the car, the automobile. And I'm just showing here a number of alternatives in these pictures. That's my son in the middle left riding a bike with us. But you've got the ferry, you have the light rail, streetcar, and then pedestrian mobility on the left. And here are the benefits, right? You've got the cleaner air. You don't have to worry about the carbon emissions from automobiles. You've quieter cities because you don't have that noise. So you get more people outside enjoying themselves, dining. Safer cities because you have more eyes on the street. Healthier population because they're cycling and walking. Climate responsibility, I think I've mentioned already. More equitable because people don't have to pay for car insurance or even buy the car, so it just reduces the cost of living. And in this country, the thing is, we don't have freedom of mobility. We're locked into automobile, and so it's really about giving people more freedom. And let's see, I've talked about this already. This just shows you worldwide the amount of emissions coming from cars. And it's just, 48% of emissions, cars. And so we really need to move away. And I was looking into electric vehicles are not the solution. They help, but they're not ultimately the solution. I already mentioned affordability, safety. So, moving away from cars, I think is important. Forest Drive is the most dangerous road in the county, in the entire county. Forest Drive is most dangerous. West Street is also in the top 10. But we don't have any solution about it. There's no solution being offered. And so that's what I've tried to change. And the council and the mayor, we are starting to push for an alternative. Reducing the amount of cars solves this traffic issue. People always complain one of the top concerns is traffic on Forest Drive, traffic on West Street. And so we need to look at transit. This allows us to look at road diets, which I'll get into a bit, and traffic calming, but also complete streets, which is where you make sure streets have adequate sidewalk, adequate cycling, adequate trees, that kind of thing. And this is just showing in the United States the amount of pedestrian fatalities. People are so concerned about guns, rightfully so, but we have so many deaths from automobiles in our transportation sector, yet people don't complain about it. You don't hear about it. It's just somehow accepted in our society, and that's really just a tragedy. When I need to put in this presentation, but there's a chart from the Netherlands and Europe, and they've had like 60-70% reduction in fatalities since they've made this shift away from the automobile. It's a land use imperative. We talk a lot in the comprehensive plan, which is mentioned tonight, about mixed use, which is where you have businesses on the first floor. Above that, you have housing, and in order to make that work, you have to have pedestrian traffic, and in order to have that work, you have to have safety. And as long as we continue to have roads like Forest Drive and West Street, you're never going to get functional and safe mixed use. So we have to look at this. But it also enables pedestrianization, which I'll also show some pictures of, and transit-oriented development. And so the Dutch Cycling Embassy, first time we went to Europe, to Netherlands, we heard from the Dutch Cycling Embassy, and they go around the whole world teaching about the importance of cycling, because that is the easiest way, first way to improve your mobility. These are just examples of what some of the Dutch paths, cycle paths look like. Note that they are completely separate from traffic. In our country, it's just you paint a line, but that's not safe. People don't feel safe in it, and rightfully so. They should not. We have to build separate lanes. Another example, if you look at the street, it used to be a full two-lane, 4-lane street, probably 4-lane if you look at this. And what did they do? And look, you can tell by the age of the trees. The trees are young. This is a recent reconstruction of the roadway. They went from 4 lanes down to 2 with trees in the middle, permeable pavers, and a completely separate bike lane. This is what we need to do more of. Not to mention the waterway on the right, the canal, for a whole nother way of transportation. This just shows you cycle storage, again, from Netherlands. Look at all those bikes. I mean, they're converting their old car garages, parking garages, to cycle storage, because they've really changed the culture over there. And I don't have to dwell on this, but health benefits, climate benefits, bikeonomics, which is where basically as you get more people on the streets, you get more customers, and it really improves your economy. And also another mode of transportation is tram, light rail, streetcar, trolley, whatever you want to call it. This is another street. Look at how wide the street is, the right of way. This used to be a 4-lane road. They made the deliberate decision to reduce it, prioritize it for transit. On the side, you see a small lane that's, I can't recall actually if that's for bikes or cars, but notice the amount of pedestrians walking on this street. Another example right outside our hotel room, and I like this one because you notice the green roofs on the bus stops, but you see, again, prioritized for transit. And this is just a good example of how you can reduce traffic the bus on the right, the amount of people that fit in the bus, and then the same amount of people that fit in the number of cars. So really just a good visual example of why we need to move towards transit. This was an example they did to show the importance of electric transportation. They made it into a library station because it's so quiet and there's no smell. And we actually have our first 2 electric buses in Annapolis. I think we're having a ceremony later this week or weekend. I can't recall, but that's coming. Dylan may have more information on that. Just another example of we saw a lot of these green tram tracks, and so the tram, the light rail, causes it gives you a lot of benefits as far as attracts tourists, economic development, transit. And when they did do surveys, as far as mobility, the modes of the modalities that were at the bottom were cars and buses were at the very bottom. People were just least satisfied. Up at the top were transit, biking, and walking, because people love railed travel because it's quiet, you don't get stuck in traffic, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I think it's really important to move in that direction. And when you do move towards, reconstructing your streets, road diets, this is an example of a street that converted to pedestrian cycle only. And again, just notice the amount of traffic on these streets once they convert them. Another example of the same thing, the street on the left, they actually had a pedestrian death. I forget how many years it was, but a car came down. The street was open to cars, but somebody came through, mowed down people, and so they permanently closed it to vehicles at that point after that incident. And just look, during rush hour, all these people walking on this street. And they also are experimenting with carbon-free zones in Sweden, and something maybe we'll look at in the future. But in order to do this, you have to have alternatives, which we don't have much of yet. Also builds in your outdoor dining. Another mode of transportation, ferries, where we're looking to bring in electric ferries to Annapolis. This is all over Europe. Most of these cities have some form of ferry transportation. This is just an example of road diet. This is from somebody found a video from Netherlands from, I think it was 90. I cut off the year. I think it's 92 or so. So the bottom part is what it used to look like. The top part is what they changed it to. And again, notice a shift from domination by car to all the outdoor dining, pedestrian, bike focus up top. Another example, they moved this from a 4-lane road to up top, 1-way road, bike lane, fully separate, bike parking. And it just leads, and this is a good example, the bottom, what it used to look like, the top. And again, creative use of trees. So we're talking about how do we expand our tree canopy? And yeah, when you look at it, and I had this conversation with Brian Adams, our forester, you can look at it on one hand, well, we don't have all this much open space to add trees. And I had to remind him, I'm like, no, our roadways, our parking lots, our space that we need to reutilize. And so this is a perfect example. This is still 2-way roadway. We can narrow the lanes and add trees right down the middle, which is really a win-win. You slow down traffic, make it safer, make it more green, and meet our tree canopy goal. So these are the kind of things I really want to look at. This is actually an example from the United States or Canada. I can't remember which, but in any case, the top was before and the bottom was after they added the bike lane, narrowed the road, and looks like they made it 1-way at the same time. This is the kind of thing which I think we could do in Eastport. Another example, on the left in the 80s, on the right after they narrowed the road. And again, notice the trees that they added. And all these systems, transportation systems, they've integrated together. And I already talked about the benefits of mobility. Locally, what do we do about it? Part of it's overhauling our parking system. And I mentioned it's tied to stormwater and trees because, one thing I'm working on, which is in which now that we've updated our stormwater fee to be based on actual impervious surface, the next step is to say, if these properties have zero stormwater management, picture your grocery stores like the Giant, Safeway, or some of these old apartment complexes, they've zero stormwater management. Well, we really need to raise the fees for those properties, right? Because we need to give them an incentive to actually convert some of their parking lot into stormwater management, into trees. And a part of that is we need to look at actually reducing or removing our parking requirements, because we can't do any of that as long as they're required to have a certain amount of parking spots. And we can't do that until we actually give them the public an alternative to cars. And so some other things we could do, electric vehicle mandate for the government, which again, legislation I'm working on with Jackie and Tillin, build infrastructure like bike lanes, trees, rails, electric buses, and also complete streets, which I mentioned. Just another example of repurposing a parking lot on the top left, what another community has done to it. This is a concept they had. So they put housing, shops, trees, hopefully permeable pavers. These are the kind of things we need to do. So again, I was kind of surprised by when I went over to Europe, was just, oh my God, they're already 100% sustainable electric transportation system. And then I came back and I was like, and then I was doing research. And I said, wow, we actually had a fully electric train trolley system in Annapolis in 1910. We had a fully electric system in 1910. And this is the map downtown of where the rail went. We had two stations, one coming from the north from Baltimore, one coming from the west from DC, and that turned into a streetcar track downtown. And a lot of this track is actually still buried. I talked to our public works. They're harvesting some of the old track on King George Street because they had to tear it up recently. So this is just some examples, comparing the same exact view. And you got to love historic city like Annapolis, where the buildings haven't changed. I love that about the city. So on the right, look at all the cars. On the left, granted, you see horse-drawn carriage, but you see a lot more people, you see a lot more bikes, and you see the streetcar, the trolley going down the street. Another example, on West Street, same building. If you look at the pillars, you can see the pillars on the left on each picture, that bank. But we used to have a train going right down the middle. Looking downtown, streetcar coming downtown. Notice what you don't see. You don't see cars. Look at all that space. This is a picture from the top of Main Street, Maryland Inn. And besides the streetcar, what else do you notice? The trees. Look at all the street trees we had back 100 years ago. So, we're in many ways, I'm looking at Europe, but, and this is another example. Look, you see bikes on the left. Look at all those bikes parked right along the street. This is right near the state governor's mansion with the fountain. The fountain's still there, but we lost the streetcar. But again, the rail, I think, is still there. This is, again, showing the connection of transportation, which we've lost. This is Naval Academy. You've got the train on the left coming down King George Street. You've got the Naval Academy bus, and then you've got the ferry. And we're trying to bring all that back. But again, it shows you we've been there. We can get there again if we have enough political leadership and initiative. And this is a picture of the ferry from the Naval Academy on the left. This is from 1834. Severn Ferry coming right at the outside the Naval Academy there. And so we are working on, sorry, I didn't quite finish my presentation, but we are working on an alternative, bringing back the Annapolis streetcar, Annapolis trolley. And one of the proposed routes would be starting downtown on Main Street and then going out West Street as phase 1B. And then in the future, connecting West Annapolis with Spa Road and then running a transit streetcar down Forest Drive to, again, address all these issues we hear about traffic and need to revitalize, especially West Street. And we really think it's possible. If you look at this as an example of Main Street on the left, you see, and this is all within the existing right of way. We've got 6 feet of sidewalk on either side, 20 feet of parking for cars, 20 feet of parking on either side with a 10-foot drive lane in the middle. You could repurpose that. We've got a huge garage, parking garage, remove all the parking, put a streetcar in the middle. You could add trees to Main Street. You could add bike lane to Main Street, all within an existing right of way. So it's certainly possible. This is showing you Inner West Street. Same thing. You've got 2 12-lane roads, 12-foot wide lanes. When Johns Hopkins recommends 9-foot wide lanes as the safest roads. And so if you did that, narrow the lanes to 9 feet, which slows down traffic, add a streetcar, add a bike lane, and you could still have 6-foot wide sidewalk. This is on Inner West Street, and you still maintain two-way traffic. You could do this alternative, which is make it one way. So there are plenty of things to do, plenty of options to do, and it really provides a unique opportunity for us, which is you have an alignment between environmental community to reduce our carbon footprint, the alignment with the historic. We want to bring back this historic mode of travel, reclaim our road for historic modes of transportation as opposed to cars. You have, we re-brick our Main Street coming up, so that's an opportunity we can actually lay down the rail. We have economic benefit of redevelopment, transit-oriented development, because rail provides that sense of permanence. So businesses and investors know it's going to stay, so they're willing to put forward more money to redevelop. I mentioned affordable housing, safety, all those kind of things. And this is just one of the, I like to show of downtown, what it used to look like with the streetcar, and shows you again, I think, where we have been, but also where we need to go again. And that concludes my presentation. I'm really trying to focus on sustainable mobility moving forward.
Thank you. Whenever I go downtown and I look at Main Street, I always try to picture what it would look like without all the cars there. I mean, because I've been down there for a couple of events where there are no cars and you can just walk, and it's really delightful when that happens.
Yeah, sure.
But I want to open it up. We have a few minutes for questions for the alderman. Paul, I saw your hand first.
Well, I was just going to say, thank you, Rob. Excellent digging up the old photos. My understanding, Dale would know the details. It's tomorrow, Thursday, 1 p.m. at the Pip Moyer Center. You're having a little ribbon cutting on your electric buses.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct, Dylan?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. So 1 o'clock tomorrow, Pip Moyer.
Yeah,
Mary Ann, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just have just a general comment. I mean, it all sounds absolutely wonderful, but I can't get my head around the practicality of it all. Given really how spread out our area is, we're not a self-contained city. I live downtown on Market Street, and I have to go pick up my grandkids in Crownsville, or I have to go to the doctor in Crofton, or, I mean, how am I going to do it without an automobile and use public transportation? I just don't see the practicality of it. I mean, I absolutely love the idea. I've been to Europe as well. And again, I've used public transportation in many cities in the United States, but as far as Annapolis is concerned, it's just not self-contained. Like, we don't, our grocery stores are, out of the city. And it's just, again, it's just a general comment. And I'm saying it as maybe a neophyte when it comes to these issues, but I think you're going to get the same kind of comments from other citizens.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And that's where, you have to look at the number of responses to that. One would be, if you look at the data, majority of our trips locally by residents are within 3 miles. And so most of them are local. And if you capture the majority of those trips, you will still get an incredible reduction in your carbon footprint, your emissions. You'll get an amazing, incredible benefit as far as like improving air quality, economic development, all these things. But yeah, there are always going to be those trips that are further out. But our hope is, and again, that's why we want to start here. We are the capital of Maryland. We really do want to start the ball rolling on creating this regional transportation system, regional electric rail transportation system. If we can prove this concept in the first mile downtown, but also down West Street, and keep expanding it, we have an incredible potential, because you could run a connection down the B&A Trail. Even next to it, there was a proposal actually 15 years ago to run a connection next to the B&A Trail. You still maintain the pedestrian, but have a rail connection. You could run, then it increases the justification to have a connection down Route 50 as far as expanding the Orange Line to expand the metro. You could run transit down 97. And it's all about allocation of resources, right? The state's talking about expanding 97 right now to be 6 lanes. They're talking about expanding Route 2. But for the same amount of money, you could actually put it into these expanding transit opportunities, when all these road expansions just increase our emissions, increase the runoff. And so, what I've tried to say is, like, this is an imperative. We have to start somewhere. We have to enable a change in behavior, because we just can't meet our climate goals and we can't meet our growth goals, because as long as we are relying on individual automobiles, we'll always have traffic that is getting worse and worse and worse. And so we have to start somewhere. And even if we just start downtown and build off of that, I think I would be completely happy with that.
Thanks, Rob.
Any thoughts on the AEC role in what would be helpful to, like, the Environmental Matters Committee and the City Council beyond what we have been doing that is still within our defined role?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, so one of the things in your defined role is building partnerships, working with other environmental groups. And one of the things I've noticed is most of the environmental groups in the area in Maryland are focused on, understandably, on water quality, stormwater, restoration of our watershed, restoration of the bay, but they haven't really made the connection to transportation. And again, half of our nutrient deposition into the bay comes from air deposition. Half of it's from runoff, half of it's from air deposition. When you look at air deposition, you've got power plants, and then you have automobile. And so we've got to start looking at that. And then on top of that, you have the runoff, right? I showed you pictures of the green transit lines. Well, you can't really do that with with roadways. And so you also have, besides air deposition, you can reduce the impervious surface, reduce your runoff. And so, again, if we're serious about meeting our goals, we have to look at this. Otherwise, we've got to just throw our climate goals, everything out of there. So my point is, I think I could really use your help as far as building these partnerships with environmental groups, making it known that, hey, we've got to focus on transportation. If you have other recommendations, other research that you may want to point out to us as far as where we should focus, that'd be helpful. If you have thoughts on legislation like you're already providing, continue to be helpful as well. But it's really that change in behavior. And as you'll see, this is really linked to, as again I've tried to mention, it's linked to our stormwater effort. This is why we need to remove parking lots. If we really want to increase our trees and reduce our runoff, and in order to do that, we have to provide an alternative for transportation. And so it really connects with all these different efforts. I mean, it's one of the top concerns I hear from people in my ward is traffic on Forest Drive. And that's one of the things that got me thinking about this, because nobody has ever presented a solution to that. When this is a solution. If we can provide transit that people are going to use, that's reliable, that's clean, this is a solution. And it's actually done. I didn't have time to put this in the presentation, but there are a number of cities across the United States who have streetcars. And I'm going to a conference. It's the Community Streetcar Coalition in Portland in April. And we're going to learn from some of the other jurisdictions who put this in. You have like Santa Fe, you have towns in Dallas, you have New Orleans, which is the most famous streetcar network. Philadelphia has streetcars, DC has put some in, but the problem is they don't really work unless they're connected to a regional system. Because to Marianne's point, you have to be able to get to the connected systems, and so that's definitely something I'm going to be working on with the county and the state as well.
Well, thank you. Would definitely like to have an update later from the streetcar, what is it? Commission?
Yeah, coalition. Yeah.
Coalition. Okay. Yes. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
I
look forward to seeing your recommendations for as you finalize them.
Yep. And we will send you the Green Roof bus stop letter also. We'll get that out in the next couple days. Dylan, you have updates for us?
Yes. I wanted to follow up. I can't remember if it was Bill or Paul asking about the fee in lieu for forestry. I'm not sure if I was speaker about that. But anyways, I followed up with Brian Adams, the city forester, and the question was about whether or not it's been increased to the market rate. And Brian had replied that developers don't have the option to only pay the fee and not replant. So the fee in lieu is basically only after the site is fully planted and there's not sufficient space for any additional mitigation. Never accepted fee in lieu on FCA properties, and development outside the property is set at $1,000 and $250, which is pretty expensive for one tree, obviously. And there's some other requirements, but basically, it pretty strongly disincentivizes not planting as many trees as possible. So I hope that answers the question. I just wanted to follow up on that. And then also following up on submitting that letter about the green roofs. Yeah, you do have sufficient time within the schedule for the passage of that legislation. I know, I believe it was you, Paul, talking about light posts for electric vehicle charging. Was that correct?
Correct.
Yes. We actually have put in a grant for that previously back in, I want to say, November. There was the Department of Transportation charging and fueling infrastructure grant. And we actually weren't awarded that for one reason or another. So we actually have been notified about an opportunity with the Maryland Energy Administration. And so we have reestablished our partnership with the provider of those street light electric vehicle chargers. And so with their cost share and MEA's grants, we should receive those at no cost to the city, provided obviously the grant is awarded. And so we're going to pilot with 10 of those. That grant isn't officially submitted yet, but we're gunning towards that. Again, it's kind of just submitting the same grant again.
Do you have a strong, well, I'm not looking for a specific answer, but maybe list 3 or 4 different areas where you think they might, if everything goes through, where would you deploy these?
Yeah. we're trying to put them in areas that are close to multi-unit developments, to areas that don't have a lot of private parking, close to disadvantaged communities, so that there's more of an equitable process for lower income families to make that switch. Or also incorporating, like, what do we understand about the demographics in those areas, and is there a high demand for public parking along with EV charging? We don't want it to be concentrated at just the parking garages, and so we want to have it scattered throughout the city. And so, yeah, we've identified West Street and some other areas close by the Forest Drive, along with some other areas. I could probably share the map with you after the grant is submitted. I don't really see why not. I'll have to double confirm that. But yeah, we're considering all different things between environmental equity, genuine demand, and kind of, I have a full database of where all the existing public chargers are, and I actually have a database of where all the permitted private chargers are. And so based on that, I can actually find out, like, where is there not a whole private charging going on, where there's demand for EVs. So by using that, I'm able to actually make a pretty educated guess, if you want to call it that, as to where they should be. So that's just an update on that. You should have all received the March highlights. And these are just, of course, what we send to the Environmental Committee every month. We have some updates about BEPS. Jackie could provide you a bit more updates on this than I possibly can. Basically, it's talking about grant funding, the Resilient Energy Code. We're continuing to work on our LED streetlight conversion. We were actually notified that we were awarded about $70,000 from Maryland Energy Administration to make a switch at over 200 streetlights. And we're continuing to talk with a consultant about how we can actually save really substantial funds to the residents on their energy and maintenance for streetlights. We'll have to talk about more on that later, but some exciting movement there. Just about to award the contract for the Climate Action Plan. Pretty much all finalized there. We are in the process of procuring community solar as a electricity customer. So that's exciting. We could save residents money there and obviously reduce our emissions indirectly. Continuing with the solar park, that will be presented as a draft design to the Environmental Committee on April 10th. Continuing to work on some other projects, along with some other things. Just continuing on with other business as usual, responding to, frankly, a surprising amount of complaints about gas-fired leaf blowers and other communications. Just chugging along. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Sorry, I probably lost my Zoom for a minute there. Any questions for Dylan? And Alderman, I think you're still sharing your screen. Nothing for Dylan? Okay, so updates from the commission. Anyone have updates and future agenda ideas?
Well, Kathy, I think we're trying to get Zoe Johnson from the Naval Academy to attend one of our meetings?
Yes, I have not heard from her. I've not heard back from her, which I'm kind of not surprised about just because of all the stuff going on in the federal government right now.
Right.
A lot of agencies have their engagement activities have been curtailed. So I was wondering if maybe it was that. I don't know if you
Yeah,
want
that's
to
unfortunate.
kind of, you know her a little. She doesn't know me from. Maybe you could try again and see.
Yeah, I'll reach
but
out to her.
it just may not be a good time with everything going on. I'm not sure.
I'm also leading I sent a message out about this to the commission, but I'm leading a greenscape team to clean up in traffic circle in Robinwood on April 26th. I just need some volunteers for a couple hours to help me plant some flowers and shrubs and trees and spread some mulch and clean up that area. And also, I'm going to detail some people to clean up trash in the neighborhood as well. So if you're interested, let me know, please.
Bill,
I think I may be available. I just need to double check. But I would like to help Mary Ann.
Bill, when was that again? I'm sorry, the date and.
Saturday, April 26th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else updates? Agenda ideas for next month?
Well, an update, and Dylan, or did you mention the whole watershed fund? Well, either way, since I mentioned it last month and shortly after our meeting, it was announced that the Severn was selected as one of the 5 for the state. So apologies, Dylan already mentioned that. I was zoned out, but yeah,
No,
so
I
that's
didn't.
exciting.
That's a good thing to mention. Yeah, we've gotten actually several updates about grants. We also received a large majority of our ask for the green space equity grants for that trail between Hawkins Cove. But yeah, thank you, Jeremy. The numbers are seemingly still being worked out. I actually asked DPW about that today. But yeah, it's very exciting. We look forward to the development on that.
Is the watershed grant, is that like a partnership? So it's not just for Annapolis, but it's a partnership with what the county and.
Yeah, the Resilience Authority was the one that was the lead on the proposal. But yeah, the Severn River Association and the county and the city are, I think, 4 of many of the partners involved in that one.
And I guess specifically, what is the money going to be used for? Is the project defined?
Yeah, and honestly, I think the availability of funding is kind of up in the current session right now, so I'm not sure how much will ultimately be still available in the pots of the different pots that it's pulling from, because I've been following the assembly lately, but it theoretically makes it easier to pull from different state pots of money. So mostly restoration work, but I think there's opportunities for conservation, like easements or other types of community engagement and outreach that all support improving the water quality.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
Yeah, I just, and Jeremy, I'm sure knows better than me, but I know there were actually several projects that were submitted, were proposed to be worked on. And actually Save Our Trees was involved in a couple of them, one in Truxton Park, and then one at the headwaters of College Creek. So they're all different projects. I think probably first it's the funding and then the decision on the projects.
Yeah, and as we heard from the Severn River Association, we know like Weems Creek is their top priority.
Yes, that's right.
So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the projects they've already identified, and many of which they've already presented to us, are on the list. They're trying to get additional support for.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Anyone else? Just a quick couple of things. I had proposed do our May meeting in person. And so, does anybody have any objections to that? And then Dylan, I guess, if you and Jackie can find out if the space and the connection and everything would work out for that meeting in
Yeah.
May. I would personally, I would prefer a conference room and not the city council chambers. It's a little intimidating to me. I like the idea of a conference room. But if you'll let us know in the next couple of weeks what's available, and that, if we've got a thumbs up on that date, that would be great.
Definitely.
Okay, thanks.
And just to confirm, then the date is Wednesday, May 28th, or is it still the fourth Wednesday for that month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I had the dates written down somewhere. I don't have them at my fingertips. Oh, yeah, May 28th. Yep.
Okay.
Additionally, we have one opening on the commission, and I've noticed that we have no representation, and especially now that Jenny has moved, we have no representation in wards 3, 4, and 6. And so I was asking Jackie and Dylan about that, and they said that we could ask city council members from those wards to put something in their newsletters, potentially kind of advertising it, but wanted to see if anybody else had any thoughts about that, about how to maybe spread this around a little bit.
I think it's a great idea to have representation from as many wards as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
If those older men or women put out newsletters, that seems like the best way to get the word out to people that will open a newsletter. That's a good start.
Okay, then I will follow up with Jackie and Dylan about getting that done. And then I noticed on our Google Drive, where we keep our documents, I keep getting a message that we've used up 80% of the space. And there are a whole lot of people that aren't getting they're not in our email distro, but there are a lot of people that I don't know if they actually still have access to that or not. And I didn't know how to go about making sure we don't run out of space and making sure that people don't have access who shouldn't have access at this point. Is anybody,
I can help you with that, Kathy.
That would be great, because for some reason, Google Drive defeats me for some reason. I don't find it intuitive at all. So,
I agree with that.
oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so Bill will help with that. Thank you. All right. The May in person, the vacancies, and I think that's all I had. Please think of next month's meeting and what we might discuss. Maybe we'll have had the training on the Facebook and webpage stuff by then, and we can talk more about that. Think about if there's a priority you'd like to dive into, and maybe we could get specific about some action items too, if there's one that people would like to tackle kind of first. That's an option also. All right. So if there is nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Alicia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone want to hang around a while longer?